Hi everybody, it's Laura. Thank you so much for joining me on my channel. Today I have a layout that I made using the Shimmerz Paints November Color Kits collection. So for this layout, I decided that I wanted to incorporate some fall leaves. I have these leaf stamps in my stash, but I found out when I made the next layout that I really didn't need to have leaf stamps. I could just use the same exact technique and do it right on top of leaves. But for this layout, I am using these two different stamps. I'm also using a number of paints that were in the November Color Kits collection, and then a couple of other paints that I had from past Color Kits collections. Right now, I'm using a combination of two different colors. I'm using a Vibez from the November kit called Rose Gold Red, and I also mixed in a little bit of a Coloringz called No Yolking. That's the yellowish color. And then I wanted to try out this brand new Shimmerz. The Shimmerz have a lot of sparkle to them. It's called Burned Out, and it's from the November kit. And I really like the way the shimmery colors look with this technique with the leaves. I think that it just makes them look so super cool. So I really liked the leaves that I made using this color and the sparkle that it gives them. I don't think you could see it on the video, but it's very sparkly. So I, as you could see, am stamping more than one time with each application of color, or not with each one, but with many of them. And at first I was thinking that I wanted the color to be rich and completely fill the stamp. But then I realized later on when I started cutting out the leaves that some of the nicest leaves were the ones where there was a lot of white space. And I made a whole lot of leaves because I wasn't sure exactly which ones I was going to use. And I was able to save some of those leaves and use them on my second layout for Shimmerz. But this gave me the opportunity to have lighter ones and darker ones and kind of pick through them and see which ones I thought would be best on my layout. So I wanted to have some leaves that were a little bit more orange, so I decided to use Vibez from last month's kit, the October kit, and this one is called Pumpkin Pie. And I love the bold look of these colors. And I didn't clean off the stamp too much. I did add some water to help move the color around. And I think that that really helped the colors to mix together. And I was able to create a lot of different effects just using this one stamp and the color that was already on there. And then I added a little bit more color for the next round of leaves that I was stamping. So I continued stamping until I had covered quite a few pieces of paper with the leaf stamp. And you could see that I got a whole bunch of different looks, although they all go together. And then I cut them all out. And then after I cut them out, I inked the edges of all of them using some Distress ink in Vintage Photo. Now, I ink most of my elements like this with Vintage Photo. I do like to ink the edges of lots of my elements, but I think that for the leaves, it was really key to making them look realistic. So now I'm going to start on my mixed media background. I have a photo of my dog Jackson, and I have a piece of gessoed cardstock. This is a smooth white heavy cardstock. I use this all the time. It's not mixed media paper, it's just a thick copy paper, but it works really well for me with the mixed media. So I started out with this really beautiful teal color. And this is a Vibez. It's called Ocean Water. And I love this beautiful teal color with all of the other fall colors. I think it's such a great combination. And as usual, I'm using the packaging technique, using a piece of plastic and spreading the color around. And then I'm checking to see if there's enough color on the background. I know where I want to put that photo, but I want to make sure that I have enough color on the background. So I'm starting off with kind of a base layer of the color. I like to spread the color around. I will add a few applications of the color, but then I'll dry the whole thing because while I can spread the color around, I can fill in some of the white spaces, the color won't get richer unless it's dry, and then another layer, can be added on top of that to make the color a little bit darker and more intense. So I am also using another color that was in the November kit. This one is a Twinklingz called Plant One On Me. And for these paints, you have to add some water to activate them. And I use them just the same way that I do the sprays. I add some water to them, I put it on the plastic, and then I squish the color down onto the background. And then I love adding lots of splatters. So I'm using the kind of leftover paint to add a little bit more water to and splatter around the background. and mainly splattering it right near and around that big area of color. So I use a heat tool, and once the background is dry, I go back in with another round of color. And you can see now that the color does get a little bit darker, a little bit more intense, and that was the look that I was going for on this layout. When I made this layout, I was away at a scrapbooking weekend. They're a lot of fun. I go with a couple of friends that I've been going to these weekends with for a very long time, although now I'm the only one who's scrapbooking. Everybody else is making cards and other projects. But I had purchased a mat, a glass mat, to put underneath my paper when I work on these weekends because they give you a tablecloth, and I always feel bad because I always spill all kinds of paint on the tablecloth. And I noticed that my friend Sue had hers and I forgot to bring mine. And so I have to remember to bring that next time, because not only do I not want to stain the tablecloth, but I also don't like to work in a kind of a messy environment. So I really have to remember to bring that next time. It's a Crafter's Companion mat. I got it secondhand, and I think that's absolutely amazing. But it can't be amazing. How amazing can it be when it's still in the packaging at home? And then I noticed that another person there just took the tablecloth totally off of their table, which probably wasn't easy because it's tucked in and all the tables are pushed together. But that's also a pretty good idea should I forget my mat again, just so I don't do this same thing next time. So now I'm adding some modeling paste to this large area of color. This is a stencil from a company called A Colorful Life, and it's little grunge dots, which I love. I use this stencil a lot because I love the way it adds a little bit of texture, but it's not overwhelming. And you can see that I'm not covering that whole area where I added the paint to in the background with the stenciling. I'm just adding it in a couple of spots just to give it a little bit of added interest. I'm using Crafter's Workshop modeling paste, but any modeling paste will do. And now I'm going back and working on the leaves a little bit more. This paint that I'm using here is called Good as Gold. It's an Inklingz from the November kit. You can see I use all the paints from the November kit, and I added some water to it, and now I am splattering that gold color all over the leaves, and I love the way that this looks. It makes the leaves so sparkly, and I don't know, leaves aren't really gold in color, but there's something about these gold splatters that make the leaves look more realistic. So I added a lot of these splatters, and I really don't think I overdid it. I think we really couldn't get enough gold splatters on them. And then I decided to go ahead and add some white splatters to them as well. And I also think that this was a good addition. Somehow all of these layers really make the leaves come alive, I think. So I continued to add lots of white splatters, and then I set the leaves aside to dry, and now I'm going to start assembling the elements of the background. So I have a piece of background paper that I'm using. I gutted this piece of orange diagonal striped paper. All the pattern papers that I use are from the kit. Here's my mixed media background. I cut it down about 1/2 inch on each side so that it would reveal the border that's around it. And then I used, once again, the Vintage Photo Distress ink, and I inked the edges. I put lots and lots of adhesive on the back of it, and I attached that down. And now I'm going to work on my photo cluster. I have this beautiful blue, is that a plaid, checkered, I never know, pattern paper. And then also this one to the left that has little flowers on a orangey yellowish background. And I'm layering those behind the photo. The bluish one goes all the way around, but then the orange one, that one I made a little bit shorter on one side just to make it a little bit asymmetrical. And then I wanted to pop up the photo, give it a tiny bit of dimension. Fun foam is great because it adds a little bit of dimension, but it's not too bulky. I always bring some fun foam with me whenever I go to these weekend crops. I actually have some that I keep in the supplies that I bring with me every time. It makes it a little bit easier packing. And I added some to the back of the photo, and now I'm adding some ETG adhesive to hold it down, although I do recommend using glue to hold it down permanently. And you can see that the ETG adhesive does not love to go on foam, but I kind of coax it on there. But the nice thing about it is that I can play around with the placement of the photo until the layout comes together, and then I can glue it down once I'm sure that I like the photo placement. So my thought for this layout was that the leaves were kind of falling down from the top to the bottom on the diagonal. And so I have some leaves clustered at the top and then some at the bottom, but I also have a couple that are kind of floating along in the middle. And then at first I thought I was going to put some in the upper right-hand corner, but the leaves are kind of large. So as it turns out, I decided that it was too much to have a leaf up in the upper right-hand corner. And I just ended up putting the title and a small embellishment up there. And then I started attaching all of the leaves down. Now, you might notice, I'm not 100% sure, but some of the leaves might change by the end of the layout, and I don't always do all of that on camera because I do spend some time with the camera off kind of critiquing the layout and seeing what I like and what I don't like and what I need to change. So every once in a while, I'll make a little switch when the camera isn't on, but the basic idea of the layout is going to remain the same. Now, this is my dog Jackson, and Jackson had a really, really big health scare toward the end of August. He had a blood test because he had to have a tooth removed, and then it turned out that there was something really concerning. And without giving you all the details, it ended up that he had his spleen taken out, but we were really worried that it was cancer. And we were worried because it seemed like the vets were very worried that it was cancer. And we got so lucky, and it turned out that it was not cancer. It was just a growth on his spleen. It was best to remove it, so we're glad that we got that out of there. And now he goes for a blood test next week, and we're hoping that everything comes back fine. And it was just kind of a rough road, and I was really, really worried about losing him. So I just wanted to scrapbook a picture of him. This was from several years ago, and I just think he looks so cute sitting on our hill, and you could see all the fall foliage in the background. So now all the leaves are attached down, and I think this is pretty much the way the leaves will remain. And of course the leaves are embellishments, but I wanted to add some other embellishments from the kit. And I don't want to forget to mention that when you place an order with Shimmerz Paints, if you mention my name in the comments, you'll receive a free gift. So might as well get a free gift if you're ordering something from Shimmerz Paints. So I added a number of the die cuts. I have some blue leaves and then also some berry leaves, and I added those in a couple of different places. I love that tree to the right of the photo, and then I added a couple of other assorted embellishments, including one of the dots, which is an epoxy circle. It says November, which was perfect because this was during November. However, it was quite a few years ago in 2017. So I took a long time figuring out what I wanted to call this layout. I wanted to make it something that wasn't just like autumn, something a little bit more personal. So I decided to call it Fall in Love. And the reason for that is we always get our dogs in the fall, and we can't quite figure out why that happens. Like, it's not on purpose. It just seems like we have quite a few dogs actually, and they always seem to come to our family in the fall. So that's why I thought that Fall in Love would be a cute title for this. So I'm adding more embellishments. I love those smaller leaves, the blue ones and the yellowy orange ones. I think that those are nice because they're smaller and they are also different colors than the larger leaves that I made with the Shimmerz Paints. I love a little hedgehog on the bottom. I'm going to attach him down in that cluster. And now I'm using some of these cute little stars. They're like fall colored stars that were in the kit, and I'm sprinkling those all over the background. And you could see to the right of my mat, there's that whole sheet of epoxy circles and stars that go so nicely with all the colors in the collection, and that's included in the November kit. And now I'm adding some photo corners to the layout. I decided to use that same orange stripe paper that I used around the edge of the layout to cut those out. And then I always like to ink the edges with the vintage photo distress ink, especially when I've used that same color on the rest of the page. And then I had some little teeny tiny pearls, so I thought that I would place those on each of the photo corners. And of course, in the last corner on the lower left-hand side, there's a big embellishment, so that covers up that corner, so I didn't add anything there. And now I use a piece of plastic and I cover up my photo, and I'm adding more of the beautiful Inklingz Good as Gold color. I splatter that all over the background. I just love that color. I can't seem to get enough of it. And then I found that I had this little sheet of self-adhesive sequins, and they're orange, so I thought these are perfect. I'm going to use these as little accents all around, mainly the leaves, but I add them in a couple of other places too. And they're a very light orange, so it's a very subtle color, but I think that it went really well with this layout, so I was happy that I had those, and happy that I brought them along with me to the weekend. Sometimes if I don't have these kinds of embellishments with me, like dots and pearls, I'll add those when I get home, but I do prefer to complete the whole layout in one sitting when I'm away and then come back and know that I have the layout done. So it's always nice to have all my supplies with me, although it's not always possible. And then I decided to finish off the layout with a circle that said, love that. And then the other circle at the top says, roam free. And I thought that those were two cute sentiments for this layout. And the layout is complete. And here are just a couple of close-ups. Thank you so much for watching this video. I really hope that you enjoyed watching it. I had a really fun time using all those different Shimmerz paints and making these leaves and also adding all that gold to the background. So when you check out the description box, you'll see that there are some links there to the Shimmerz shop, to this kit, and also to get a subscription to the Color Kitz collection. I hope you have a fantastic day and a very happy Thanksgiving, and I hope to see you again soon. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.